Right, so hello viewers and welcome back to Europa Universalis 4 with me, Pew. So, in the last episode, I believe we had expanded down here, meaning that we integrated, namely Cologne and Friesland, but at the same time we also fought off a Austrian sort of a coalition against us, so that is sort of that. And for the next, right around 4 to 5 years, so up until 20 or 15, 20 to 21, we'll probably have to lay low and we'll probably have to get rid of, say, some of the aggressive expansion sort of modifier we had there, and again, rather some of the relation penalties from incorporating lands of the Holy Roman Empire as well. So in the meantime, we can check out a few different things about the game, namely some of the stuff regarding military troops, and yeah, I suppose we'll just do that. We'll just sort of wait out this period of time. And one of the things that you guys may have noticed is that I did some, say, modifications on my recording setup here, and you may have noticed that the audio quality would be, say, better in quality, but also slightly maybe we're perhaps more quieter. And this is because I bought a pop filter for my mic, and it just came in the mail today. And also my mic has this sort of built-in sort of a processing thing in it that just does certain functions like equalizing sound and doing stuff like that. Built in, but for whatever reason was on the musical setting for the longest time, and not on the sort of narration slash podcast slash just generally talking setting. So yeah, I've changed that, and yeah, that's pretty much that really. Right, so in the meantime, we were supposed to check out, say, some of the military things, so let's do that. Namely, we can upgrade our unit infantry type here, and very soon we can upgrade to military tech level 10, which will give us access to some better cavalry as well. So we'll tech that up, get a new election going on, I suppose, and we'll upgrade our military techs entirely. So, skimming over the military stuff just very briefly, the general flow of this is that over time, your infantrymen, or rather your forces, just sort of in general move from doing vastly morale damage to shock damage to fire damage, and these little blips here represent their offensive sort of values. The green ones represent their defensive values. Now, I believe this sort of all factors into the amount of sort of phases that they do in battle, and to an extent, you'll pretty much only use the offensive values in attacks that you start, and the defensive things that, rather the defensive values in defending battles. And how they work is that these are just, I want to say, the damage amounts. So for example, this sort of reformed type of infantry will do 1 morale damage in defensive battles, and only that, whereas in offensive battles it'll do 2 and 2 over here. But just reading off of this little tooltip, I'm not particularly sure if my understanding of that is exactly correct. It could be, say, attack and defense strengths as well, just sort of exactly what it says there. So yeah, that's sort of that. I mean, I just generally know that it flows from morale to shock to fire. Currently we have access to we have the option to upgrade our units from the longbowmen to one of these, and I'm gonna go with the Condota type of infantry, because they're sort of a mixture of both attacking and defensive, and they have a good attack to shock value. So we'll go with that. We'll lock that in, and we have the newly teched up cavalry unit, and yeah, the cavalry really techs up late inside the game. So usually for the first bit of time, you're stuck with the Latin Knights or the Chevauchés, and they have pretty much abysmal stats once you unlock the better infantry. But now with the Schwartz Reiter, they're actually very viable, so we'll lock those in as well. And we can also upgrade our cannons. Currently they have a slight amount in fire. They're not exactly the biggest use, or rather they don't have, say, that big of a use right now, but over time, when you get into some of the advanced levels of cannons, those things really start to pump out damage at those levels over there. So yeah, that's sort of my breakdown on the combat for that section. In the meantime, I think we'll build up, say, our fleet slightly more, and we'll put down, say, a few cavalry units for a big army over here. And the general ratio is that you suffer a penalty if you have more than half of your men, or like you want to keep a ratio of 1 cavalry unit to 2 infantry men. So yeah, you want to keep that below 50% of what you have for infantry. And with that said, said, I mean, we can still incorporate a decent amount of infantry into our army over here, so we'll do that right off the bat. And afterwards, I think we'll take a look at some of the policies and some of the ideas that we can lock in this playthrough. And it looks like we gained some more manpower this year. That'll be helpful. Despite, or no, we're not at the cap of manpower, so yeah, that'll actually be helpful. Right, so get these guys assembled. Let's see. For some reason, we suffered 3 casualties, so I guess that's that. Oh, I see. We're taking attrition damage, so we'll move our army closer to the coast. Provinces on the coast usually have less attrition. Currently, we just have a really big army, so yeah, that's that. And we can invest in a new idea now. And, well, we're getting very close to finishing the trade ideas section, along with the administrative ideas section over here. So I think I'll finish off administrative ideas right now, and this will lead us very close to unlocking the policies, and we can check them right now. So by unlocking the last idea inside administrative ideas, we gain a miniature sort of perk like that, and we'll also, of course, get the overall perk from the entire section of ideas, and we also have unlocked the national, rather cultural idea over here. So yeah, that was this will be rather handy. Namely, we gain resilient state. It'll reduce the cost to reduce inflation in administration points, and because we don't have the national bank idea, this will actually be pretty helpful, seeing as how we do accumulate quite a bit of inflation just off of those random events. We've also gained the let me see, the general buff in the idea section of producing more goods nationally. This will play a role later on when the Industrial Revolution and production really sort of kick off, because those things typically become a major factor in the amount of money that you make off a trade, so that's good. And with this reformed Handstag idea, we gain a bit of a stability cost modifier, so I suppose that's kind of useful, and it also lessens the time to justify trade. And I suppose this they've updated some of these ideas in the Wealth of Nations sort of expansion. That was one of the ones that they changed, so yeah, that's sort of that. Can hire a new military leader, I think we will. And ooh, we generated a pretty good guy this time, and I think we'll hire a foreign drill instructor for some more army tradition. Currently, what I've been noticing right now in some of my other games is that for the combat, the land morale is just absolutely critical for winning big battles against bigger nations. And with that said, it does depend on this army tradition by quite a bit here. So with that said, we want to try to keep that as high as possible, because our prestige and our power projection, while they factor into this category, army tradition will factor into it even more. And I want to get it to be high, mainly due to that. And the second thing is that we can roll for some really nice leaders. This Gregor guy adds 4 to fire, and like I said, fire becomes pretty important in the game as time goes on, and I believe it's actually more deadlier the earlier you get it, but at the same time it's not really cheap to buy it early on. Anyhow, I mean, currently with that pretty much gotten, this Gregor guy will be a powerhouse at sieging with his sort of 1 blip in power and powerhouse on the battlefield, seeing as how he inherently adds a whole large sort of chunk of damage to the firing phase of the battle sort of simulation. So that'll be neat. In the meantime, there's really not, say, too much we can do. We can fire off a few events, but most of these are sort of things regarding, say, the missionary strength or stability cost modifiers on things like that, so they're not particularly interesting. I think what I'll do is that I want to get this small army combined with our main force. The other thing that we could probably work into doing is that we'll have to take stability sort of loss here, because I want to keep that Republican tradition high right now, is that we could just build up our armies, say, more on the seafront right now. There's really not too much we can do. Currently, I mean, I'm looking east to expand right now, and I think our current goals will be probably to swallow up either Brandenburg here as a nation, or alternatively Pomerania as a nation. I should have probably shown you guys earlier on, but there are a few things that have happened inside the world in the meantime. Namely, Poland, oh perfect, Austria has left the military coalition against us, but namely, Poland has grown really, really big. It absorbed Lithuania through its personal union, and after 50 years of being in a personal union, the leading country in those personal unions have a chance of absorbing the secondary country. And Sweden's also becoming a pretty big major power, conquering what would be effectively bits of Finland here with Muscovy, and the other Norway over here, where whatever country goes on the other part of that area. So yeah, that's sort of that. And in the meantime, I mean, the big thing about sort of expanding into the east here is that I usually play as Brandenburg, so it's something that I know a little bit more about. And the general idea is that you want to press into the east here, but depending on how your game goes, and like I said earlier, I mean, Poland, they either become really small, they become really big. And if they become really big, you run into this issue of which provinces you want to take over here, because you can form the Prussian nation if you take Danzig and the areas around it, like Ost-Prussian over here. But at the same time, Poland usually has a claim on one of these places. Namely, you want Danzig because it has a base tax value of 12, which is comparable to Lübeck, because historically Danzig was a Hanseatic trade city, so it was pretty valuable. It was effectively the major trading port inside the area. It was it's sort of a pick-off and drop-off location for the trades inside the Baltic Sea, and it was also used to access the river passages over here by smaller boats. The other thing about it is that on the trade map mode here, it actually has a trade sort of buff for it to represent that, even despite the fact that technically it's not part of the Hanseatic League. So it has this important center of trade thing here, and if you control it, it adds automatically 10 local trade power and +1 to however many boats you can really just sort of man. So that's sort of that. Going from here, oh wow, 2 of our advisors died in 1 year. That is not good. I'm just gonna fill their places really fast here. Oh, and perfect, we can get a guy who does better relations over time. That'll be pretty useful, seeing as how he'll make those sort of aggressive expansion modifiers and all that disappear. So, going from there, I mean, I believe we don't have a coalition on us anymore. Right, so we don't have a coalition on us anymore. I think we'll form a few more bigger, say, alliances with other people. I'll try to find one with, say, France over here. That would be a really useful ally, but it doesn't look like they'll accept with our current stats. So I'll send a diplomat over to influence them, and I'll see how high I can get that stat going along. And going from there, I'll see whether or not we can gain a few bigger sort of world power alliances going on here with some of these alliances, or rather some of these people over here. I'll try to probably nab Hungary over here as well, and we'll just really continue like that. We'll want to snuff out Brandenburg here probably later on, but I think for now we'll just see what objectives, or rather what missions, the game gives us here. I'm gonna do this one, just build a star fort, so that won't cost us very much. It'll just take right around 10 or right around a year to do. I was gonna say 10 years for some reason. But we'll build a star fort inside this this province right here, seeing as how that will make it so that we gain 5 military tradition, which of course factors into the morale side of things once more. And the main thing is that I just want to roll for a mission to either conquer, say, Pomerania over here, or Brandenburg, or one of the neighboring countries, really. So right, we'll do that. And another thing that we could try to do is that I could try to build an embassy, because we'll be needing more diplomats over time. And this will give us +1 diplomat, but it'll also have the perk, if you will, of adding some points, making it harder for our enemies to make cores on our core provinces. It's not really that useful, because in the event that we lose a fight, we'll probably be destroyed, actually, just due to the fact that all of our rivals are great powers. So yeah, that is one thing that's kind of nice, kind of not. So yeah, that's that. Right, so now, let's see, I really just want to tech up and finish the trade ideas section over there, so we'll do that. And it doesn't look like we have any completable missions. We can do the religious unity one, but that one's actually pretty difficult. Currently, Protestantism is spreading, and it's penetrating a few of our provinces here and there. It's not a big issue for now, at least, but as time goes on, it is going to be a problem. Converting from these Protestants back into Catholicism is actually pretty hard, unless you fire off some of these decisions over here, and it's sort of one part of the game that I don't really like to play a lot of, so I usually just sort of keep that as a neutral type of thing. Right, so I mean, in the meantime, I'm going to check on these ratings over here. Austria will probably be neutral. They're probably still going to, yeah, they don't want any of their provinces anymore, so at least that's good. In the meantime, at least the sort of bad relations we have with them are being fixed up. I'm going to check here just slightly. I want to check who has a claim on Brandenburg's lands. Hopefully not Poland at all. And it's, let me, you know what, it'd be easier if I just check what the Polish icon looks like. Because I do want to make them a vassal, but that's going to generate a decent amount of heat as well on us. So that is one thing that we can do, but it'll cost us. And I believe this is also a newly sort of edited, changed icon over here. The trade ideas, trade manipulation section. It'll increase our trade steering wherever we have trade steering, and that's inland and of course on the seas. So that'll allow us to push more cash into Lübeck. Currently that's sitting at 21.8. Looks like that increased slightly. Perhaps that 21.8 was the adjusted value already. Maybe the game just decided to update really fast for once. So that's one thing that we can just sort of take a look at. Right, so yeah, there we go. Our prices keep on rising, unfortunately. We're at almost at 10% just sort of inflation, which isn't that great. But at the same time, I think it also factors into higher income. So that's another part of the game there. And I'm going to test out this whole leader combat sort of power on this group of rebels. So the game goes through quite a few different phases of combat, and I suppose we'll take a look at that here. They go through fire, shock, and then I believe a section to check for routing and other things like that. But in the event if things don't route, it'll just sort of switch back from combat to combat between shock and fire. And this will be factored against the sort of the width of the territory here, how many troops are just sort of present, and who's really on the fighting line over here. These rebels are actually pretty damn tough. They have actually fought off our army here. Wow. So, with that said, actually, we might want to start to incorporate more cannons inside our force, because right now, I'm going to assume that we're losing these fights because the idea of frontage does play a large role inside these battles, and the people inside the second role, inside that combat sort of front there, I don't believe they can actually fire over the first row, even if they are, say, like, musketeer infantry, like, when you get them later on, or even, like, archers, like those longbowmen we had. So we'll see about incorporating a few cannons into our lines here and there, but we do have that army force limit sort of there, just sort of looking back at us as well. So yeah, that's sort of that. I'm gonna see whether or not we can hire a advisor that can do something for us there, somebody who can increase the force limits. We can hire this guy, but it's gonna cost us a whole ton of our income. So I don't think I'll do that just yet, and we can of course grind these rebel forces down over time with our forces, but I think it'll be time to perhaps cancel this group of troops, which will sort of rebuild as cannon sort of units for us to use. That's another advantage of cannons, is that A, I mean they work great for sieges, and B, they can fire inside the back ranks. I mean, yeah, because inside these fights, I mean, our army should be very, very comparable to theirs, but unfortunately, I believe this is a mixture of bad dice rolls and just sort of the lack of frontage for our men, which is causing us to lose some of these battles here and there. So at least we won that one. That'll add some army tradition to us. It'll take the place, but it'll cost us a ton in manpower, which is rather unfortunate there. So at least hopefully these cannon artillery pieces will help solve our problems there, and of course they will add to the fire modification rolls on our army here. I could actually try to go for a perfectly balanced army of 20 infantrymen, 10 cavalry, and just whatever left we have for artillery here, but I'm not going to do that, mainly because I need the infantrymen for sieges to detach small sieges here and there. So yeah, that is one thing that is sort of an option, but I don't think it'll be the right thing to do in our sort of scale, or rather method of warfare here. And perfect, we can get administrative technologies, a level 10, which will open up a free slot here. And now we have a bit of a, say, a option, or rather a dilemma, to sort of choose a thing for us here. Not really a dilemma, but more or less sort of a split paths type of thing. We could go for another administrative idea, which would be very useful. Namely, the innovative one is one that's pretty useful because it reduces technology costs, makes advisors cheaper, which is pretty useful. And I think the best one is that, yeah, it also lowers the decay for army tradition, technology cost again, and it does stuff with mercenaries, so that'll factor into one thing for us. We could go for expansion ideas and economic ideas, mainly for the sort of the trade, or rather the colonization play like that, but it's probably not something that we want to hop into. Diplomatic ideas is probably one of the better options here. It's one of the ones that I'd like, but it'll interfere with our current progress inside the sort of the trade ideas section right now. So I think that really just sort of leaves the